She always believed a janitor's job ended with mopping floors. But one quiet night, when the boardroom buzzed with lies and hidden traps, it was the janitor who saw what no one else noticed. With calm wisdom and a mind sharper than her entire executive team, he unraveled a $1 billion scam right in front of her eyes. In that moment, the CEO realized she wasn't just saved by a worker people ignored. She was saved by the only man who understood the value of honesty in her heart. The lobby of Meridian Tower was never this quiet. Under the silver glow of moonlight, every marble tile reflected the tension pulsing between CEO Sienna Vale and her ruthless rival, Damian Cross. Papers were scattered across the conference table, numbers glowing on screens, and the future of her company hung by a thread. Damian leaned in with a cold smirk. "Sign the merger," he whispered, "or watch Meridian die by sunrise." Sienna's heartbeat thundered. She had spent years building this empire. But tonight, she was cornered. That's when Damian's eyes shifted toward a man quietly mopping the floor. Ethan Cole, the invisible janitor with old sneakers, gentle eyes, and a uniform nobody ever looked twice at. Damian chuckled cruelly. "What's this? You brought an audience? Maybe he can explain your financial mess." Even Sienna cracked a tired, dismissive half smile. "Ethan, don't mind him. Just finish up." Ethan paused, rested both hands on the mop, and looked up, calm, steady, unshaken. Then he said a sentence that sliced through the air like lightning. "Cancel the Helix acquisition. It's a trap." Silence, the kind that makes the earth stop spinning. Sienna's blood ran cold. The Helix deal was classified, known only to her, Damian, and one other person she no longer trusted. The Damian smirk faltered. "What did you just say?" Ethan stepped forward, wiping his hands on his faded uniform. "Helix is bleeding money. Their Q4 numbers were altered. If you buy them, Meridian collapses." And Damian, you already knew that. A janitor had just exposed a multi-billion-dollar deception. Calmly, precisely, without stumbling. Sienna stared at him, the world tilting. The man she overlooked, the man everyone dismissed, had just saved her company in one sentence. And in that breathtaking, impossible moment, everything began to change. Sienna Vale stormed through the glass doors of her 80th floor office, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor, dragging Ethan Cole behind her. The city lights below twinkled like distant stars, oblivious to the storm brewing inside Meridian Tower. She needed answers fast. "Tell me who you are," she demanded, voice sharp as a blade. "How does a janitor see what my legal team missed? What how?" Her words faltered as Ethan's calm, steady gaze met hers. Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't fumble. He simply placed the mop aside, brushed imaginary dust off his hands, and spoke with a quiet authority that made her stop mid-sentence. "I notice patterns," he said simply. "Small ones. Tiny discrepancies in numbers, in behavior, in reports. People call it luck or intuition. I call it paying attention when no one else does." Sienna blinked, incredulous. Her heart was racing, mind spinning. Every financial model she had trusted, every deal she had signed, suddenly seemed like child's play compared to the clarity in Ethan's words. "You're not buying a company," he continued, voice calm but firm. "You're giving up 51% control for pennies. If you go through with Helix, you won't just lose the deal, you'll lose your empire." The air in the office grew thick. Sienna sank into her chair, trying to process the truth she had just heard. It was impossible. How could a janitor see what her entire executive team had missed? She studied him. The uniform, the mop, the quiet demeanor. They were all a facade. Hidden beneath was a mind that could outthink, outmaneuver, and outsee anyone in the room. He wasn't just clever. He was a genius hidden in plain sight. 48 hours, Sienna finally said, voice steady now. You get full access. Authority to review, investigate, and stop this deal. Whatever you need. Consider it done. Ethan nodded once. A silent promise. But behind the calm exterior, a storm raged. He wasn't just racing the clock for Sienna or her company. His daughter, Ava, was lying in a hospital bed miles away, sick. The medicine she needed was almost gone. Only 4 pills remained, enough for the next 2 days. Every decision, Every move he made was now double-edged. Save a billion-dollar empire and save his little girl's life that Ethan's mind sharpened. He had always been invisible, a ghost who saw everything others ignored. Now, the stakes had never been higher at AS. He walked through the corridors of Meridian Tower with full access in hand. He saw numbers, contracts, emails, hidden patterns everyone else overlooked. Every file, every report, every seemingly insignificant memo whispered the same warning. Helix was a trap, but Ethan wasn't just a janitor. He was a sentinel, a strategist, a father racing against time. Every move he made for Sienna's empire was also a move for Ava's future, why the time night fell over the city skyline. The impossible had begun to feel possible. A janitor who was a ghost, unseen and underestimated, now held the fate of a company and a little girl in his hands. And for Sienna, the woman who had always believed in appearances, the lesson was clear. Sometimes the most powerful minds were the most ordinary uniforms. Ethan Cole hadn't slept in days. His eyes burned from the harsh glow of multiple monitors, fingers moving with relentless precision across keyboards, piecing together fragments of emails, transactions, and encrypted files. Each line, each number, each hidden code whispered a single, horrifying truth. The threat wasn't just external. It had come from inside Meridian Tower. He froze. A pattern emerged, one he couldn't ignore. Victor Harland, Sienna's mentor, the man she trusted above all, was secretly feeding Damian Cross every confidential detail, orchestrating the Helix takeover from the shadows. Ethan's pulse quickened. He had always been invisible, always dismissed, but this betrayal was monumental. He pulled up a video hidden deep in the servers. There it was, Victor smiling, shaking hands with Damian, a cold, calculating grin that could crush empires. And then the audio, Victor's confession, clear as day, admitting how he manipulated Sienna's decisions for profit and revenge. Sienna's eyes widened as Ethan called her to watch. Her heart shattered in the quiet of her office, tears threatening to spill. This was the man she had loved like family, the one who had guided her, mentored her, shaped her empire, plotting her downfall all along. But heartbreak has a way of lighting fires. Sienna's chest tightened, not with despair, but with fury. The woman who built Meridian from the ground up refused to kneel. Together, she and Ethan turned to Margot Lane, her father's most loyal advisor, the strategist who had always operated in the shadows, unseen yet unstoppable. They devised a counterstrike, a poison pill clause buried deep within the Helix contract, invisible to anyone not looking closely. It was a silent trap, one designed to crush Damian and Victor if they tried to seize control. Victor took the bait, falling into the snare without realizing it, believing he still held the power. Meanwhile, Ethan's mind was split. Every victory for Sienna felt shadowed by worry. The image of Ava, feverish and pale, haunted him. Only 4 pills remained, and time was slipping away faster than he could track financial anomalies. Then Sienna did something that shook Ethan to his core. She summoned her personal medical team and sent them directly to his home, ensuring his daughter received the care she desperately needed. The gesture was simple, yet profound. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a warmth he hadn't known he deserved. He wasn't invisible anymore. Not to Sienna, not to anyone who mattered, as Victor's betrayal unraveled and the silent trap secured Sienna's empire. Ethan realized something more important than contracts, money, or strategy. He was fighting not just for a company, but for the little girl waiting at home. And for Sienna, watching the janitor who had saved her empire move with quiet, fierce determination, the lesson was clear. True strength doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears worn sneakers, carries a mop, and beats with a father's unwavering love. That night, the battle lines were drawn, and a new war, one of loyalty, genius, and heart, had begun. Just when it seemed that the battle was nearly over, Ethan Cole froze mid-typing. His eyes scanned the screen again, disbelief tightening his chest. There was Silver Protocol, a financial bomb, lethal in its simplicity. A digital weapon capable of erasing Sienna Vale's empire in a single heartbeat. And the cruelest part? It was built from the algorithm Ethan had invented years ago, the same one Damien Cross had stolen to frame him, the same one that had haunted him for months. Sienna's fingers hovered over the contract. She didn't know the ticking time bomb beneath her signature. One wrong move, one signature on the Helix acquisition, and the empire she had fought for all her life would implode. But if she didn't sign, Damien would crush her anyway. Checkmate. Ethan's mind raced. There was only one way out, one lifeline buried in the code he alone had created, a ghost pattern kill switch, invisible to anyone else, executable only by him. But it wasn't simple. It required perfect timing, nerves of steel, and precision beyond human instinct. He reached for the phone, dialing a number he hadn't used in years. Ryan Trent. Ryan answered on the first ring, a mixture of surprise and caution in his voice. Old wounds, old betrayals, flashed between them like lightning. But desperation forced trust. Ethan explained the situation in terse, urgent words. There was no room for hesitation. By the time Sienna walked into the boardroom, Ethan and Ryan were synced, every micro trade, every trigger plan down to the millisecond. 17 trades. 3 seconds. The exact moment Sienna's pen would touch the contract. One slip, one misfire, and it would all be over. The room was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Damien grinned confidently, oblivious to the trap laid out beneath his feet. Victor Harlan still lingered in the shadows, smug, convinced he had outsmarted everyone. Sienna lifted her pen. Ethan's fingers hovered over the terminal. Ryan's eyes mirrored the same determination. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. Then, like a choreographed symphony, the trades executed in perfect precision, each one cascading flawlessly, neutralizing Silver Protocol before it could ever detonate. That Damien's smug expression faltered. Victor's confidence cracked, and Sienna, watched in stunned silence, as the empire she feared was lost, remained untouched and stronger than ever. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. But amidst the adrenaline and triumph, a quieter emotion stirred, a fragile, tender warmth. Sienna approached him after the chaos settled, her eyes reflecting gratitude, awe, and something more. For the first time, the janitor who had once been invisible felt seen, not just for his genius, but for the heart that had risked everything to protect a company, a girl, and the woman who had finally recognized the man he truly was in the boardroom of Meridian Tower. Amidst victory and danger, one truth became undeniable. Some heroes don't wear capes. They carry courage in silence and love in every calculated move. The boardroom was a pressure cooker. Every tick of the clock echoed like a drumbeat in the silence. Sienna Vale sat poised, her pen hovering over the Helix contract. Every eye in the room was on her. Damien Cross leaning forward with a smug grin, Victor Harlan radiating quiet arrogance. The tension was razor-sharp, thick enough to slice. Across the city, Ethan Cole's fingers danced over his terminal, eyes locked on the Silver Protocol. The algorithm pulsed on the screen, a sleeping monster ready to annihilate everything Sienna had fought for. 3,000 miles of data, one miscalculation away from disaster point. 3:58 p.m. Sienna's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted her grip on the pen. Damien's eyes gleamed, certain of victory. Victor's lips curled in a self-satisfied smirk. Ethan whispered under his breath, almost to himself, now. Ryan Trent's fingers struck the keys. The kill switch sequence surged into the market with flawless precision. 17 micro trades, executed in 3 seconds, each one dismantling the Silver Protocol's power before it could even awaken. 0.1 second, 0.2.3. And then, flatlined on the other side of the city, Damien's phone erupted with alerts, each one screaming catastrophe. His stocks plunged, his trap crumbling. Panic spread across his features like wildfire. Victor's smug confidence shattered, replaced by disbelief and fear. Sienna lowered the pen gently, a calm smile touching her lips. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she pressed a button on her tablet. The screen behind her lit up with the video Ethan had uncovered, the damning proof of Victor's betrayal. For Victor, the room went cold. His carefully built facade of loyalty and guidance disintegrated before everyone's eyes. Every whisper of deception, every hidden act of treachery was laid bare. His world collapsed in silence. Security officers entered the room promptly, guiding Damien and Victor out. The enemies who had threatened Sienna's empire and nearly crushed her dreams were finally removed. The tension evaporated, replaced by a victorious stillness that Sienna's gaze shifted to Ethan. No word were needed. In that moment, the janitor who had been invisible, underestimated, and overlooked had saved her company, exposed betrayal, and orchestrated a victory that no executive team could have achieved. The boardroom erupted in quiet murmurs of awe, respect, and disbelief. And for Ethan, a subtle, rare warmth filled him. The acknowledgement not of his title, but of his heart, his brilliance, and his courage. Sienna leaned back, the city lights of Meridian Tower reflecting in her eyes. Her empire was intact, stronger than ever, and the man who had saved it stood quietly, a hero unrecognized by the world. Until now. The impossible had been done. The battle was over. But for Sienna and Ethan, a new understanding had begun, one built on trust, respect, and a silent promise that some bonds are forged not in wealth or power, but in courage, sacrifice, 1 month later,
and heart.
the world has changed. Damien and Victor are gone. Vale Industries rises stronger than ever under Sienna's leadership. And Ethan, once an invisible janitor, now walks the 81st floor as head of risk strategy. His name cleared, his brilliance recognized. Ava runs into his arms, healthy, cured, full of life. Sienna appears at the door with a warm smile. What began as a war became family, a second chance born from courage, truth, and a quiet man who refused to stay in the shadows. Sometimes the strongest hero is the one nobody ever sees coming.